All right, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hello, Internet. We are the Blockchainers, and we're coming at you straight out from Gangnam in Seoul, Korea. And today we have a very, 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 very special guest, the man of the hour, out to devour. Yes, Dominik. Welcome.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. You're welcome to the show, Dominik. All right. So, how are you feeling today?
Tired?
Yeah.
A busy day, but I think pretty excited for this interview. See the reaction of the community and where we can take this.
Is it your first interview or?
It's my first video recorded interview.
Really?
But before that, I did other interviews over the phone and so forth.
Interesting.
Thanks.
Okay. Let's get straight into the interview then.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Dominik, people will be curious about your background and stuff. So, could you tell us when and why did you get into blockchain space, and what have you done before co-founding IOTA?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm 21 years old. So I've been in this blockchain space since 2011. I seriously got into it in 2012. In 2011, I was kind of in this gaming and hacker scene where people introduced me to the Bitcoin white paper. And at first, my English wasn't good enough. And so obviously couldn't really understand what it was about and so on and so forth. But then I just started reading into it. I remember reading this white paper on mining where they were talking about FPGAs, ASICs, and so on and so forth. And that's kind of how I really got into it then. And so in 2012, I had a startup which was focused on something completely unrelated to blockchain, but we had AWS credits, Amazon Web Services. It was $10,000 worth of AWS credits. And what we did then is there was this new coin coming out which was called ProtoShares. And so we were fuck it, let's mine it. Yeah. And so we raced to get all of those GPUs set up. And so we mined ProtoShares. And so it was quite profitable. And so from that experience, we kind of realized hey, this blockchain stuff, it's quite serious, and you can do some really interesting stuff in it. And I was always very entrepreneurial, so I'm very focused on being independent, just building awesome stuff, not being bored of life.
Yeah.
Right? and so what I did then is with all of the money that I made and with some investor money, I wanted to do my first blockchain startup.
Okay.
It was in 2013. End of 2013, and so I went to Switzerland. I had good connections to the Ethereum people, so the Ethereum founders, and so they came to me and said hey, we're setting up this crypto valley in Zug. And so back then it was only 3 or 4 companies, and so I was, I think, the 4th or the 5th company to go to Zug to help build the crypto valley. But things didn't turn out so well, and they lost $500,000 in the end. So
you mean your startup?
Yeah, exactly. So I failed in it because I was trying to set up a fiat exchange, like a cryptocurrency exchange, so that you can buy and sell tokens. Because I was thinking I'm going to make so much money with it. And so the biggest problem was banking, legal, regulatory stuff, all of the hardcore shit. And I was only 18 years old back then. Every time you went to a bank office, I just told you hey, never come back again. Yeah. So because it's hey, Bitcoin is for money laundering, it's for drugs, it's completely against our internal policy.
Wow.
And so it was quite crazy. But I really didn't give up, obviously. Even though today everyone goes to Switzerland to raise their $100 billion ICO, but I realized that this is really here to stay, and it's not just about Bitcoin, but it's so much more. And that's kind of how IOTA then came around, actually. But something else that I should probably mention is my pro gaming kind of history.
Yeah.
So I was actually #1 in Call of Duty. When it was
it's cool.
Yeah, it's just kind of cool. It's like a humble brag. Yeah, so I was #1 in Call of Duty, and so that was with 14 or 15. And so I was really into gaming back then. And so I'm hoping to go back to gaming after IOTA.
After IOTA?
It's kind of stable.
After you make it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's gonna take how many years?
I don't know.
10 years?
So much suffering. We'll see.
Okay. Then what aspect of blockchain that got you interested? Why did you like blockchain?
Yeah, so obviously I wasn't driven by making money. So I didn't enter this space to become a millionaire. So the main reason why I entered is really because I was encompassed by this permissionless innovation. Like anyone can participate, anyone can contribute towards this economy. And back then I had my own startup. I had to pay my own developers, and I had to go through some other ways to pay them. So because I wasn't 18, I couldn't open a PayPal account. So through that you're really like discriminated, right? You can't do anything until you're 18.
Right.
But with Bitcoin and with cryptocurrencies in general, like you were really empowered, because now you can just pay anyone. It doesn't matter who you are. You can have your own wallet. Machines can have their own wallets. People, no matter their age or whatever, can have their own wallet, and that's truly empowering. And that's really what drove me, like this permissionless innovation. And that's really what I'm trying to foster with IOTA as well. Especially with the IOTA Foundation that we're setting up.
Yeah. Why don't you ask the questions? Right now the chat room's going insane because of technical limitations. So I'm focusing on that right now. But anyways, yeah. When and how was IOTA born?
So IOTA came out of a hardware startup. So we have a hardware startup which is called Jin, which is focused on developing a new trinary-based hardware. And so our focus since the beginning was really on the Internet of Things. And because the founding team of IOTA is very complementary, so we have Sergey Ivancheglo, who's like the really hardcore computer scientist, and probably one of the few blockchain experts in as well. And so he developed NXT, the first full proof-of-stake blockchain.
Oh,
so he has this like really deep technological knowledge. Then we have Sergey Popov, who's the mathematician, who like specializes in probability, which is all about consensus algorithms.
Right.
And then me and David, who are like very technical but also very entrepreneurial and business driven. So we came together and realized like, hey, everything that is out there today, it doesn't work. When it comes to scalability, we have huge issues. We have transaction fees, which are still like varying too much. And when it comes to the Internet of Things, you simply can't run any software on it. And that's how IOTA came to be. And so the thinking behind IOTA is always like, hey, we have this one-dimensional blockchain, like this sequential chain. It's obviously the main limiting factor. Like the blockchain in the blockchain is the limiting factor. And so then we came up with the Tangle concept, which is like this multi-dimensional thread, a mesh. In that sense, like one transaction references two past transactions. And we use a DAG, the Tangle. Yeah. And that's how it was born in 2015.
Okay.
And should I tell about the ICO or something?
Yeah, we're going to ask that question later, probably. Yeah, but the question is, why did you focus like particularly on the Internet of Things? Why?
So the Internet of Things is everything, right? So it's this ubiquitous computing platform. Everything is going to be connected, and there's so much potential. Like it's going to be $1 trillion industry, and the Internet of Things today it's in infancy. So it's just a concept for most of it sometimes, and there's nothing concrete. So as such, it's like a green field. So we, with the new protocol, with new hardware, can really enter the space, this ecosystem, and start like being one of the early adopters who are really also there to define it, like blue ocean for us. And Internet of Things is also very like we are truly passionate about it, like fog computing, making it possible for those like dumb actors to create a network, and through that network you get this bottom-up intelligence. That's really what drives us, and yeah, it's fascinating. So we only do stuff that we really find interesting. We don't do it for the money.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen your profile that you are interested in e-governance and collective intelligence. Can you tell us like how collective intelligence is kind of like is related to the IoT?
So it's really the swarm intelligence stuff, really, where machines start sharing data with each other, and they collectively start making better decisions. Like for example, we are really focused on security of things. And what you could do then, there's some interesting things where how the collective of the machines can start quarantining other machines that are misbehaving, not according to the protocol. And I think that is really interesting for the Internet of Things, that for one, it's there to make smarter decisions, and for another, it's there to really secure it. But collective intelligence for me is also like this human aspect. Like humans start interacting with each other, they start like sharing data. Like, for example, there's a hole in the street, you start sharing that, hey, there's a hole, someone should fix it. It's also kind of this collective intelligence to build up a better world. But collective intelligence and e-governance is more like personal interest of mine. I don't do it professionally or so. E-governance was I developed one of the first voting applications on top of Ethereum, and like an analysis on how expensive it would be to host like an election. and it's just really interesting, solving a big problem because I've never voted in my life. So, yeah, you're like
You just become like
you have to leave your home, right? You have to leave your computer, and then you have to stay in a queue, just vote, like fill out the paper ballots. Like that's stupid, and like e-governance powered by blockchain makes a lot of sense, which is why I got into it.
Right. Yeah. Let's get more into technical questions. Probably, I think we've seen on your blog that the IOTA itself, but you just mentioned it as well, came out of a hardware startup, which is working on a new trinary microprocessor.
Yeah.
So my question is, what is trinary, and how did the hardware startup evolve into like the blockchain sort of called IOTA?
Yeah. So one thing to mention is that Jin is really like a stealth startup, so we can't publicize too much about it. But we'll probably have the first prototypes ready by the end of this year, hopefully. And so trinary is really like we have 3 states. And when you look at the radix economy, like you have this Gaussian curve, you start realizing that, hey, like 3 states is the most optimal way to represent data. And so binary is inferior to trinary when it comes to representing data, so as such is much better for computation, storage. And when it comes to the Internet of Things, always like energy efficiency is everything. And there's some very, very interesting applications that you can then also start doing with machine learning and so on and so forth. And which is why we realized like, hey, when it comes to the Internet of Things, fog computing and so on and so forth, we can really bring forth a completely new system, complete new architecture, which brings to it like great benefits. But one thing to mention is that the hardware startup is independently of IOTA. So IOTA is like its own beast right now, like its own ecosystem, and the hardware startup is always like an integral part of it, and also an integral part of our vision of everything.
So about the trinary aspect, like, are there any like you said that it's better optimized for data. So are there any like papers or are there anything that we could read? Like
if you read The Art of Computer Programming by Knut, he will mention it there. So
wow.
Yeah, exactly. And like that is kind of seen as the Bible of computer science.
And then after that, starting from there, like people started writing papers on was a lot of research done.
So it was actually developed by the Russians. I think the first computer was called Saturn. That was in the 60s, 70s. But then also the Soviet Union didn't have the funding to continue it. And then binary kind of became the standard. But I can share with you some papers afterwards as well. So it's really fascinating stuff. How you can represent data with it.
What are the vast benefits of using trinary then?
Yeah, really like the energy efficiency that you gain from it. Like you can do more with less.
Wow.
And as such, it's perfect for the Internet of Things.
Okay. I think it's quite a very, very new approach. I mean,
nobody
actually in the blockchain space has like think big about using trinary.
Exactly. It's funny because some people started ridiculing us on Twitter, even though like they had a very uneducated opinion about it. So it makes sense. And the thing about blockchain is nobody knows what you're doing, and as such you just have to try.
Yeah.
And you have to dare to try.
Yeah, I think you're exploring a lot of different fields at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to speed up the innovation, right? You just can't say like hey, like it's too dangerous. Right. Obviously, like at the end of the day, like there's so much money behind, so you have to be careful like the actions that you take. But trinary is not security related anyhow. It's really just about adoption in that sense.
Right. One of the criticisms I say on Reddit probably is that the trinary, if you use trinary, you might not be able to use tools that are specifically designed for binaries, and then there's not much like ecosystem to support.
Yeah, so it's not that we are developing a complete new ecosystem. So we're still based. We can still work with binary based hardware. And so IOTA, it's trinary based and it runs on your computer, right? So there's not a huge problem there. Right. There's some other problems, but I'm not an electrical engineer. But I don't think that we will face big adoption problems. So what we are also doing is we're going to open source the dedicated hasher for IOTA, the trinary hasher, kind of like an ASIC, so that any hardware manufacturer can easily integrate it into their machines.
Does the success of IOTA depend on the adoption of trinary hasher?
No, not at all.
Because I've never heard about trinary before IOTA.
Really? Like nobody did, right? Or like nobody in the space did.
Right. Yeah. I'm definitely willing to like study more about it. Yeah, there's just so many like fringe technology that comes into blockchain. I mean,
exactly.
I mean, what is it like? the Byzantine generals problem, you would never encounter that unless you did distributed computing. Paxos and RAF, like what the hell is that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it is fascinating about it because now everyone kind of like really starts getting a CS education through blockchain.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Which is crucial.
So I think quite many things that you do is quite unconventional, even in terms, even in the blockchain industry, right, where everything is kind of unconventional. Like you're at the extreme side.
Right. Do you mean from the tech side or from the community side, or how we run IOTA?
From tech side.
Okay.
Different technologies that you adopt.
Yeah, absolutely. But it makes sense, right? You have, because the funny thing is, only up until last year, people started realizing, hey, like this stuff doesn't scale. And you have to be unconventional to really like push the innovation forward. Yeah. And we are leading. I do argue that we are one of the leading projects when it comes to like bringing forth new innovations to the space. And yeah.
Yeah, we agree.
I have a question. So that like Young-hoon actually studied this for study IOTA for several weeks. Like I just got into it like just a couple days ago.
Yeah.
I've been reading whatever I can. For somebody who's coming from a blockchain background, how would you best describe IOTA to them?
Yeah, so perhaps I should make the two major distinctions of blockchain versus IOTA. So obviously blockchain, perhaps let's start with explaining what a blockchain is in very basic terms, how it works. So we have this sequential chain block after block after block, where the miners are racing against each other to get the next block. They aggregate the transactions in the block, append it, and then it's always like validated by the entire network. And if you make a transaction, you have to interact with the miners. They say like, hey, input my transaction in the next block, here's the transaction fee for it. Then you wait for some time and it magically gets accepted. In IOTA, it's obviously completely different. So the first difference of IOTA versus blockchain is no longer the sequential chain. It's this directed acyclic graph. And as such, the thing about blockchains is that you serialize the confirmation. And in IOTA, it's a very asynchronous network. That means that transactions get confirmed at the same time. Because it's always like asynchronous and there's no single entity, no validators that validate every 10 minutes in cycles. So that's the first major distinction. The second major distinction is always like, hey, how do we achieve consensus? Like I said previously, we have those miners that are there to do most of the consensus work, validation work. And in IOTA, we're more democratizing than that. We say like, hey, we don't have any miners, but every network participant is also actively participating in the security and in the consensus of the system. So if you execute a transaction in IOTA, you get two transactions which are currently unconfirmed, you confirm them, and as such you're contributing to the system. You're confirming transactions and you're securing the Tangle. And as such, the transaction making process is no longer decoupled from the consensus, but it's inherently part of the protocol. And yeah, so it's pretty, IOTA is pretty simple.
Is it? Okay, yeah, I think the Tangle is like one of the nascent conventional data structure that we've seen in blockchain space.
Right.
It's not even a blockchain, right?
Yeah, exactly. A blockchain without the blocks and without the chain.
Yeah, it's like kind of cool. It's like when I first saw it, like I thought it was really cool, but like at the same time, I had a doubt. I mean, is that really gonna work?
Yep.
Right. So my question is that, okay, before that, what are the benefits of using the data structure called Tangle? What are the main benefits compared to other sort of one-dimensional blockchains?
Yeah, so it's obviously incredibly scalable. So we parallelize the confirmations, and the beauty of the Tangle is that the larger the network gets, the faster the transactions get confirmed, and as such, we're able to achieve much higher transaction throughput. So we always say that IOTA scales horizontally. The more nodes you add, the faster it scales. And that's one of the first major advantages. The second one is no transaction fees. So we don't have any miners to subsidize. And as such, because you're contributing to the system, you don't pay any fees. And that's incredibly interesting for any business that runs on top of IOTA. Because the promise that you have with Ethereum or with Bitcoin is that the more popular it gets, the higher the transaction fees and the more useless it gets to a larger number of the developers. Because your dApps can no longer run. It's an unprofitable business model. With IOTA, you have this determinism. So like if you send 1 cent, you receive 1 cent, and as such, you know that your business model at the end of the day is going to be profitable. As such, IOTA is the only protocol that allows micropayments today. Nothing else can do micropayments. And so the third advantage is partition tolerance. So you can start branching off the main Tangle and do transactions in this offline environment, which is also incredibly interesting for the Internet of Things. because the Internet of Things is this asynchronous network. We don't have one main network protocol, but we have different mesh networks. As such, it makes a lot of sense to use IOTA for that, for partitioning. And we are also quantum secure, because we use internet signatures. But that's less Tangle, more IOTA, a specific implementation.
Right. Then, like, my biggest question and doubt is that the thing that in Bitcoin, for example, the reason you put like a set of transactions into a block and make a block in every 10 minutes is that try to sort of like one of the reasons is that try to prevent the double spend.
Exactly.
It's like how does IOTA prevent the double spend? Because we don't have, it's asynchronous. We don't know that the same output has been spent.
Yeah, exactly. So blockchains require timestamps
Right.
to solve the double spending issue.
Right.
And in IOTA, the beauty is that we don't need timestamps we don't need transaction ordering to solve the double spending issue. And the way that we solve it is really through this kind of self-regulating environment. So we say that, hey, like, if you validate a transaction, you really are checking if it's a double spend or not. But if you make a mistake, or like you're a malicious actor that says like, hey, I want to start confirming my double spends, then someone else will come along and they see like, hey, like you reference an invalid transaction, it was a double spend, and as such you're no longer going to confirm it. And through that, we're really solving the double spending issue. So in IOTA, also it's also like if 33% of the network uses a biased tip selection algorithm, then you can start. Then you're starting having problems with double spends. But it's the same with Bitcoin, with blockchain. I think there was recently a paper that put it at like 41% or something.
Yeah.
By Cyril Grunsbaum.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting paper.
So basically, for your case, for Bitcoin it's like 40, like 51, whatever.
Yeah.
But for your case, it's like 33% of the.
Yeah.
It's like participants should use the.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Use the same algorithm.
Sorry.
So it's more like.
So it depends on like so we have the MSIMC algorithm, so Markov chain Monte Carlo, which is the tip selection algorithm, and so the security of the system really is kind of it's based on this tip selection algorithm, so that it randomly selects 2 transactions in this tangle. And if you start having a biased tip selection algorithm, then you start having problems, which is why we always say like, hey, 33% of the network uses our tip selection algorithm, we're fine. Which is also why right now we have to use the coordinator, because the mean security assumption of the IOTA tangle is that we have a large enough network.
Right.
And as such, we also need a lot of transactions per second to achieve the security, which is kind of like completely opposite of blockchain, right? And the coordinator is right now protecting against some of those attacks.
Yeah.
Oh,
then let's get to the question of coordinator. Can you explain to the viewers what coordinator is and why you need it?
Yeah, so the coordinator is a node that is run by the IOTA Foundation, so it's like a completely normal node, and what it does is it issues milestones inside this, and those milestones basically reference the valid subtangle in the entire tank. So they basically do this checkpointing where we say like, hey, these transactions are valid, network, please check it, validate it. So it's still a very decentralized network, but the entire network still does the validation. And right now the coordinator is really there to make it possible for the network to grow, because if we didn't have a coordinator, you could always make some attacks against the network. Right. And we need to have this ability to kind of make it possible for the network to grow in order to be self-sustainable, so you don't run into security issues.
So people kind of criticize you having that coordinator because I think there are 2 main reasons. First is closed source, and the second is that the because we gotta trust you. I mean, so you gotta trust IOTA. So foundation to be honest.
Exactly, but like the second argument, at the end of the day, we have to trust the humans that are behind it, right? Because the entire system depends on our ability to execute. So all of those theoretical attacks, like, oh shit, like this is completely closed source and this is completely private, is not right. That's stupid, because like Vitalik is also kind of a single point of failure of Ethereum, right?
Yeah.
And so humans are a bigger security threat than the technology itself.
Okay.
But so to answer your closed source question, the main reason is obviously the coordinator is shorter. We want to completely get rid of it as soon as possible. And right now we're developing this Oracle platform on top of IOTA. So the coordinator is going to be an Oracle in the future. There's run by the IOTA Foundation, so it's kind of like a multi-signature, and it's very transparent, and yeah. But right now it's also really about copycat protection, and making sure that there's not a scam running around, copying the technology and like making it bad.
Okay, interesting. But why did you make it closed source? I mean, is there any other way that you can actually make it open source?
So we are actually thinking about making it open source as soon as possible. So we're working on that.
Right.
But our intention is really to completely replace it with the Oracle that we're setting up, because an Oracle makes also more sense in that way.
Okay. So can you elaborate more on Oracle replacing the coordinator?
So it's like it's pretty simple, right? So it's an Oracle that continuously does that has its own consensus between the different. So that we can, for example, have 3 different participants in the coordinator Oracle, and they have their own consensus. Like it's simple quorum voting, quorum-based voting, and then they vote on what's the next milestone, and then they issue the milestone, and the entire network validates it. It's a pretty cool concept, and it's always more transparent in that way.
Okay. What are the kind of like timeline of like?
So it largely depends on when we have our Oracle network ready. Okay. So we hope to have something ready soon.
Right. Okay.
I can't give any estimates. Right?
Yeah, got it. Then like next question is also about Tangle, right? What types of nodes there are in Tangle? Do you have the nodes that stores all the transaction history?
Yes. So do you mean right now or in the future?
Probably right now, and your like ultimate goal.
Right. So right now we only have one reference implementation. Okay. Reference implementation of IOTA. So everyone has the same software. There's no light nodes. Right. So what we have is the full node, and you store the entire history. But what we do is we do those snapshots where we basically are able to discard the entire database, the entire history, and what we do is we just aggregate the transactions to the latest state. Okay. Yeah. So like this address has this balance, and it then gets into the snapshot, and it's actually able to delete the entire history. But obviously in the future we're going to have a very different set of clients. So one of them is going to be like normal full nodes who are doing the full validation. They are also going to continuously participate in snapshots. So we have the full nodes, and we have the perma nodes. So the perma nodes are really there to store the entire history constantly. Right. And we're actually incentivizing those. So you on a pay-per-query base. So if you, for example, want to search the IOTA history from 2016, you can interact with the perma node, and you pay per query that you make to them. Okay. And then we're also developing swarm clients. So where a bunch of IT devices can come together to build up a full node. So they're like reducing the hardware and the resource requirements by adding those devices into a cluster. Okay. And make up the full node, and also lab nodes.
Okay. So apparently there's a perma node which stores all the transaction history, and there will be a node that only stores the snapshot of the the current state.
So then we have nodes that are going to participate in the snapshots continuously. Okay. Yeah. Exactly.
How big is the database right now?
Right now it's like 4 or 5 gigabytes. Okay. It's not that much, and unlike others which are like, I think the Bitcoin blockchain is like 200, or how much is it?
So I think it's like 120.
120.
I don't know. I'm not sure, but I say more than 100. Yeah,
exactly. Nobody runs a Bitcoin full node.
Yeah, we'll try to run one. Okay. Yeah. So it's quite interesting. Like I don't completely understand how like the consensus works in the. So basically, how consensus works in Tangle is that every node who want to send a transaction should verify the previous 2 transactions.
So when it comes to consensus, I think we need to discuss like transaction finality. Like when is a transaction accepted by the entire network? Right. So in blockchains, we have this heuristic that says like after X blocks, you can be sure that your transaction is completely confirmed. Right. And so in Bitcoin, it's 6 blocks. Right. So you have to wait on average 60 minutes for it to confirm. And in IOTA, we have a more fluid, or I would say more dynamic approach to transaction finality. So instead of saying like, hey, you have to wait 60 minutes or you have to wait 6 blocks, the main interest is obviously you want to check, hey, when is a node confirmed? When is there a reference from all of the unconfirmed transactions, from all of the tips to my transaction? So in order to determine the confirmation status, what you do is you start, so let's say that you started issuing your transaction right now. What you do now is you start listening to the entire network. So now other people are starting making transaction, and obviously they're starting to indirectly or directly reference your transaction. And as such, they're securing it. And this compounding weight in IOTA is really crucial to the security of the transaction. So what you do then is you start listening to the entire network, and then in order to determine the confirmation status, right now is you execute the MCMC algorithm, so the tip selection algorithm, you execute it 100 times. So you then, from those 100 tips that you got, from those 100 transactions, you check if there's an indirect or direct path to your transaction. If there is, you make a check and say like, hey, like this transaction confirmed my transaction. As such, it secured it, participate in the consensus. And as such, you can start really easily determining the security. So like if you execute the MCMC algorithm 100 times, if 50 out of those 100 times there's a path to your transaction, it's like 50% secure, right? There's a 50% probability that it will be completely confirmed or it will never be confirmed. And if it's if it's 100%, it's in this global state in IOTA. So global state in blockchain is also like incredibly important because everyone is supposed to have this global state. The same transactions in a database. And in IOTA, we have this concept of eventual consistency. So after a certain period of time, everyone in the network is going to have the same global state. But in this high throughput transaction environment, only a certain number of nodes are going to have all of the transactions. So they're kind of building up their own cluster, their own mesh, and confirming transactions. And then as the transaction gets propagated to the entire network, other clusters are starting to confirm it, and as such it becomes confirmed by the entire network. That's how we achieve consensus in IOTA.
Wow, it sounds to me as really really dynamic.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not that strict, because the problem of blockchain is blockchains are obviously also eventually consistent, but they don't use it to their advantage, which is why blockchain is a very rigorous approach to consensus, which also means that you're really hindering the scalability. In IOTA, the main bottleneck is the network propagation. Like how can it propagate the transactions throughout the entire network? In blockchain, the bottleneck is really the consensus, because you can only do X transactions per second.
So how many transactions per second do you think you get?
Yeah, so right now we've benchmarked it at 1,000 transactions per second with the coordinator, because the coordinator is right now the main bottleneck. But what we're doing is with those simulations that we're running on the supercomputer, where we were also able to achieve much higher transactions per second. The goal is really to achieve infinite number of transactions per second through economic clustering and our dedicated hardware. But the goal is really to have this by 2020, kind of.
I want to ask the question about light client. So, because the IOTA should be used mainly for IoT devices, which is sort of a limited storage, bandwidth, kind of stuff. So I think you got a sort of efficient way of managing resources for the light client.
Yeah, of course. So one thing to emphasize is that not every machine is going to be a full node. So your coffee machine is not going to be a full node. Do you have a coffee machine?
Yes, we do.
So it's not going to be a full node, right? But the beauty of IOTA is that the transaction making process is divided into 3 steps. Signing, tip selection, and proof of work. And those 3 steps can be done by 3 different machines. And obviously our vision is this machine economy where machines start really interacting and working with each other. So when it comes to the signing, your coffee machine can have a wallet, because it can sign any transaction once. So it can have an IOTA balance. When it comes to the tip selection, it can be either a cluster of devices, swarm clients, or it can be a full node that you interact with. Most of the time, it's going to be a small hub in your home, and all of your devices in your vicinity here, they're connected to the smart hub for the tip selection and for other like state queries. And the proof of work can be done by an FPGA, by an ASIC, and as such can be completely outsourced. And through that, IOTA is really much more lightweight than anything out there today.
So basically, if you imagine the smart home where all the smart IoT devices are in the home, and then they can sort of like each device can carry out different functions.
Exactly. It's really this machine economy. One has this, the other needs it, and they start like doing even economic transits with each other. Paying for services.
Then can you think of a situation where those kind of small devices outsource the mining function to sort of like a centralized kind of like mining, dedicated mining hardware?
So the best example is the car. So in the car we have those different ECUs, And ECU is always a very lightweight machine, so you can't do the proof of work. But the beauty of the car is that we have FPGAs. So we also have like dedicated GPUs inside the car that are there to do the computation.
Right.
And as such, the ECU inside the vehicle is able to outsource the computation to an FPGA inside the vehicle.
Yeah.
As such, it's two machines inside the car that are like interacting with each other.
Wow.
And through that, you make a transaction.
Oh, I think that's interesting. That's really interesting. Is that the machine economy that you kind of envisioned?
Yes, so our vision of the machine economy goes much beyond that, right? So it's really about making it possible for machines to trade any resource with each other. So one machine has access computation, storage, bandwidth, and it needs to be able to sell this to another machine on demand. And IOTA is really the micro payment settlement layer for this. And the beauty of this machine economy is now a machine is no longer limited to its hardware. So it can go beyond even its hardware. All it needs is its own wallet. So a machine becomes its own economic agent.
Right.
It has 8 kilobytes of RAM, whatever, but it can buy computation that is as much like a supercomputer. All it needs is the ability to pay.
Okay.
And it's incredibly interesting for any like software developer now, because now you can think much beyond just hardware. You can think like, hey, like I have this tiny device, but I don't care the hardware about the hardware specification. I can do all of these different things. And like it's really like also changing the mindset of application developers. And I think through that we are truly unleashing the Internet of Things, because everything else really doesn't work.
Okay.
We need to have those autonomous economic agents for the Internet of Things to work. At the end of the day, we want to replace humans, right?
Do we? Yeah.
So why not make it possible for them to pay each other?
Okay. It's like we're slowly replacing humans. I mean.
Hey, just really quickly. I don't know if people can hear me, but there's been several questions from the viewers. So I don't know if you want to take time to answer them.
How many viewers do we have?
Right now, currently we have around 70 viewers right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you okay with answering some of the questions?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So the first question comes from Mr. Saidi. He says, Energy is going to invest $1.2 billion. Is a part of that investment involved with IOTA? He says the source is Reuters.
I can't answer these questions.
Okay, you don't have to answer that question. Next one. GeekX says that he wants to ask if it's right that the classic blockchain is still better in administrative and logistic applications, and IOTA DAG is only better in financial applications.
No, not at all. Not at all. Also, blockchains are always limited when it comes to some of the use cases that banks and so on and so forth are developing. So our focus with IOTA is two things. Data security. So anything that has to do with the supply chain, you want to secure the data. Like it's audit what is happening along the supply chain. So you have this chain of custody. For that, IOTA is perfect. And then there's also machine-to-machine payments. Also remittances are super relevant for IOTA and so on and so forth.
Okay.
But we still have to figure out like what works for this use case, what works for that use case.
Okay. Okay, 2 more questions. Moonkid asks, text messengers have been developed on the Tangle. Would email leveraging Tangle tech make sense? At least this would help support the network.
I'm not sure if it makes sense. Like it would help support the network, but I'm not sure of the use case. Like why would you want to input your email, make it tamper-proof with IOTA?
Yeah.
But we have a text messenger based on IOTA, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is super cool.
Yeah.
Ida Smart, the final question. She says, is blockchain named in the Trusted Alliance press releases from Bosch, Cisco, and Energy a marketing name for the Tangle and IOTA? I think this is similar to the very first question.
Oh, I don't know. So you mean because of the synonym or the acronym that the Trusted IT Alliance is using?
I guess so.
Yeah, I think that was kind of like unintentional. Yeah.
Okay.
But we're working with the Trusted IT Alliance, so yeah.
Completely accidental, right?
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
But the acronym makes kind of sense for them.
All right.
IOTA.
All right, cool.
Okay, let's get back to the question of Tangle. So what are the major attack vectors of the security of Tangle?
Yeah, so probably parasite chains. Also like one of the other major ones is like withholding transactions. So that you start having confirmation issues. Right now with your coordinator, for example. And most of them are mentioned in the white paper. So what we're doing right now is we're redoing most of those simulations that we did in 2015 with a supercomputer, and we're writing up a new white paper which is going to go in depth into some of the attack vectors and how IOTA is able to like circumvent them.
Interesting. Well, when will that white paper?
So we will have a teaser ready probably within 2 weeks. So Bartos, who's one of the researchers that recently joined the team, is going to publish some of the simulation results. So those are really going to be really interesting.
Right.
But everything that we do, like we're like really perfectionists. So it sometimes takes a lot of time to like get the graphics done and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, you got a really cool graphics.
Yeah, Sabre is good.
Yeah. Okay. So I think as far as I know, the IOTA is more like a payment network for the Internet of Things devices.
And security.
Yeah, and security or identity. Like, can you support like smart contract functionality between?
So right now we are making it possible to enforce timestamps in IOTA, and through that you could support smart contracts.
Okay.
But we are also working on interoperability with other smart contract layers. But our focus is really to make ad hoc protocols, protocols that do one thing and do one thing really well. And IOTA does this transaction settlement really well, and then we can start building other protocols.
Okay, so then your focus is on like security and transactional settlement.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. I don't know if that's possible, but is there any way to like formally verify the security of Tangle?
So we're working on making some better proofs as well. So we have 3 mathematicians from Brazil.
Right.
One of them is Sergei Popov, and who's the professor. And so this is also part of the new white paper to convince some of the skeptics.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think it's really isn't it sometimes really hard to convince people that it actually works?
Yeah. So the thing is about this blockchain space is there's no security framework. So you can't compare IOTA with blockchain because like apples versus oranges, and you can base the security on the fact that we've been live for more than a year, 1.5 years now, and we have a market cap of 1 billion. So there's a huge incentive for someone to attack us, and we were just attacked like I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. Someone was trying to really like disrupt the network, but we are able to like really bypass those and survive. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Do you see any problems?
But one thing to emphasize is everything is a proof of concept. Bitcoin is a proof of concept, Ethereum is a proof of concept, IOTA is a proof of concept. Everyone has to prove themselves and actually build something that works in production. Because nothing works in production today. It's all just like playing around right now.
Right. Yeah. So I think the impression that I got is the Tangle as a data structure itself is inherently scalable. So do you need like other like scalability solutions like Lightning Network or like sharding or other stuff?
So not inherently, but what we're doing is we're developing. So we're probably gonna announce Flash tomorrow. And what Flash is like this layer 2 solution for instant payments. So we always say that IOTA is general purpose and Flash is like use case specific. Like for example, token streaming between the EV charging station and the car. For that you would start using Flash because it makes a ton of sense to use it for that.
So is Flash like a Lightning Network? Right?
Yeah, exactly. Like Lightning Network for IOTA, but cooler.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not a network right now. So right now it's Flash channels. Because the problem with networks is obviously, it's with Lightning Network, is with the RAID network, is the routing problem. So nobody has solved it, and I doubt anyone will solve it anytime soon. Which is why we are focusing on really like these bi-directional payment channels. It's not, you can't just hop from one node to another node and to another node. So you're just between 2 parties.
Wow.
And for that, the use case makes a ton of sense.
So it's, but one of the things that the Lightning Network uses in the Bitcoin blockchain is that it uses the it utilizes the function of timestamping, right? Time lock functionality, but like partly IOTA doesn't have it. So do you have no problem?
It's gonna have timestamps as well, so we can enforce those things.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So for the Flash channel to be implemented, you need a timestamp.
No, we don't need it.
Okay.
Yeah, but you have different security assumptions then, also. Yeah. If someone goes away, they kind of disincentivize because they lose their deposit.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to the languages. Like, do you have like how many different cloud implementations? Like,
so right now we have 3 which are in active development. So Java, C++, and Rust.
Okay.
So we're focusing on those, and especially Rust.
Uh-huh.
That's also part of IOTA being more production ready, because Java client is also one of the main bottlenecks right now. And so we're working on new clients.
Is there any reason why you use Rust? Focus on Rust.
Yeah, like it makes a lot of sense for the security and also for the scalability. It's also IT friendly.
Okay. Privacy is another issue in the IoT devices. Like, how do you? So apparently the Bitcoin blockchain so it's not very private.
Yeah.
Right? But IOTA, for the IoT devices, the privacy is more serious problem. So,
but I wouldn't say so, because the thing is, privacy. Think about having thousands, millions of transactions per second, and it's all just micropayments, and then good luck finding out who does what, and that is also like kind of one privacy component of it. But it's also not a very strong one. But what we're developing or right now is this tumbling service on top of IOTA. So we're doing that together with UCL, where one of the students is developing this. And through that, we were really going to enable privacy in IOTA as well. And once zero-knowledge proofs are IoT friendly, we'll probably think about integrating that somehow as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think most of the technologies that you use is shows kind of dramatic departure from the conventional sort of blockchain industry. Well, conventional blockchain industry uses.
Yeah.
Right. One of them has recently had issues. Right. It's like apparently the CUR, the custom hash function.
Right.
You developed as can you elaborate on why you choose to develop your own hash function and what was the problem?
Right. So we needed a new ternary-based hash function.
Yeah.
And the thing about IT is this screen field where you can't use very complex crypto, because it's just way too computationally heavy.
Right.
And it takes a few seconds for you to generate an address, for example, and also in an era where the NSA is able to really dictate NIST standards, you can't just go with this you control your own crypto. The thing is we did do some unconventional things, but we are really on this path to invest a lot of money to really go peer review curl, and then also standardize it as a really IT friendly hash function. So we're still fully committed to curl, and we're going to further develop it, and we're going to probably invest more than $1 million.
Okay.
So we've just hired 5 cryptographers.
5.
Yeah.
Wow.
5 which are specifically have their expertise with sponge functions for IoT. Yeah.
Okay. When I was looking at your blog, I mean, it's every now and then, there's a post saying some of the researchers, developers that come into your team.
Yeah.
So you seem to have quite a big team. How many team members do you have?
So the core team is really around 30 people.
Okay.
Yeah, but the thing is, we couldn't hire anyone for the last 2 months because we were finalizing the IOTA Foundation setup.
Okay.
So we had to transfer the tokens that we had to the IOTA Foundation.
Right.
And right now we're hiring a lot to really build it out. So what we do with the IOTA Foundations, we do kind of the hardcore protocol development, which is always only a few people can really do it.
Yeah.
But we also do this ecosystem development. So I have business developers hired by the IOTA Foundation, which are there really to get startups and especially corporates, also governments, into our ecosystem to build something. Which is why we're also going to set up an office in Chicago, probably one somewhere in Asia, and we have one in Oslo and in Berlin. Yeah. So we're really expanding globally.
Yeah. Okay. What are your firm's sort of a main area of focus in terms of research?
Research is really about the Tangle itself, how we can further optimize it and make it really, really good. So there's still some work to do related to economic clustering and so on and so forth, for example. But there are also some other very interesting areas of research, like multi-party computation, and how we can combine IOTA with that and so on and so forth.
Okay. I think it's good for technical stuff. Let's move on to machine economy. So I want to know what kind of features are you envisioning in terms of with IoT devices and machine economy?
Yeah, so like I said before, machines really transacting with each other and just selling resources, selling data. Right. And the main thing that really drives us is this bottom-up intelligence. So that through this economic transfers of between machines, you start really having adaptive and very intelligent networks that make smart decisions collectively. And so the biggest applications that we think of is data marketplace, where machines start selling data with each other, computation markets, and also any other resource like bandwidth, access to bandwidth, storage, and computation. Electricity as well.
Electricity.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So do you envision IOTA being the de facto currency for IoT?
Yeah, it's so one thing.
Economy?
Yeah, exactly. So one thing to emphasize is that we are really not a huge fan of those utility tokens. So what's the point of having a electricity token? What's the point of having a data token? The thing is, what you start doing is you start completely fragmenting the ecosystem. And you have a token for each of these different resources. And the problem is that doesn't scale. Because now you have huge interoperability issues, and now a machine needs to have like 10 different wallets just to be able to participate in this machine economy. And we see IOTA truly as the backbone of this machine economy, and we see IOTA token to be there for all of this value transfer. So it makes more sense to have one token versus all of those different utility tokens.
Okay.
Which is why all of these recent ICOs are like kind of stupid.
Yeah, that kind of makes. Okay. So, do you think that the IOTA can be used not just for the machines but as humans as well, just like Bitcoin?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So we see, like I personally see Bitcoin as like the digital gold, like it's really there to be the storage of value, most of it, and IOTA is there to achieve this vision of transactional settlement. So that you can pay your Starbucks coffee or something like that with IOTA. So you probably wouldn't pay with IOTA, but it's kind of like the backbone, the protocol behind it. So we're doing a lot with web payments. Like for example, with the Satoshi Pay demo, where you can now start paying per article that you read. Or more interesting stuff is also remittances. So you can start transferring money around globally, and IOTA makes a ton of sense for these things. So one thing to emphasize is we're really focused on the Internet of Things because we like it. And we see a lot of potential in early adoption there. But there's so many other applications that for which IOTA is really good for. And we're not just about IoT.
Yeah, particularly like if you have a really high throughput and like zero transaction fee, it's like
exactly.
too good to be true.
Yeah, like with this reliability of the network, it's truly compelling to use it.
Right. Yeah. The more users participant you have, do you expect the more secure your sort of IOTA platform becomes?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, this is one of the main security assumptions.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so go back. Move on to the question about ICO. When was your first ICO and how was it?
You mean when I personally participated?
No, for IOTA.
With IOTA, we did it in 2015, and so we raised like $500,000, which is nothing, right? And it was quite crazy because we're not people that hype stuff, and some other projects raised like a few $1 million.
Yeah.
So you do kind of think like fuck. But with those 500K, we then had to build IOTA, right? And it was fucking difficult, but we survived. And now IOTA has become one of the most profitable ICOs for those who participated.
Yeah,
because it's huge return on investment.
Yeah, but like the question can be like that leaves not much money for the foundation.
Exactly. So one thing to emphasize is that we're kind of like very honest people. So we didn't allocate any tokens to us when we did the ICO. Like normally what ICOs do these days, or what Ethereum did back then, they said like, hey, like 17% of all the tokens go to the foundation, to the founders.
Right.
And sometimes these days they take like 50%, which is just stupid.
Ridiculous.
And we sold completely 100% with those 500K. And so we, as founders, also had to participate in the ICO in order to get tokens. Also wouldn't have gotten any tokens. And what we did with the community then is we said, hey, like if you want to have an IOTA foundation, you need to donate. And so through that we raised like 5 to 6% of the total supply. And that's how the foundation is run right now. So it's like $50-70 million right now.
Okay.
So it's good.
Okay.
But we had to fucking work to make that money valuable, right?
Right, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. How about the initial token distribution was like? So 100% of the token were all distributed at the point of ICO.
Yeah.
Okay. Then like, how can I participate in the ecosystem? I mean, so you have It's like new additional supply now.
Exactly. So
Right.
we will never have more. So it's always well, in order to participate, you would also have to buy tokens. Or what we also have is this ecosystem fund, which is like $10 million. So if you want to build something, you can apply to the ecosystem fund and get patent tokens.
But doesn't that leave your token too much concentrated on the hands of few?
So that's just the argument with everything, with every cryptocurrency. Like it's always the early adopters that start benefiting from it, from the later adopters.
Right.
And there's no solution to that. It's an equally big problem, or even bigger problem in Bitcoin, where we have these huge whales. In Ethereum as well, where some are speculated you have like 5 to 10% of the supply.
Right.
And IOTA was very like honest ICO, ICO which was very like distributed. And there's some really cool stats about that. How many people got to participated, how it was distributed, and yeah.
Yeah, but still, like the Bitcoin, Ethereum, they still have additional supplies. Like.
Right. But that raises other problems, right? Because now you have problems like hey, those other miners are really like pushing down the market. They're creating new tokens, and so on and so forth. But Ethereum is also going to have a fixed supply once they implement proof of stake, right? And yeah. But so we try to think of a technical solution that we can also like mint new coins, new tokens. But we didn't come up. We didn't think of anything good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then like it just like the question about the fork. I mean, Bitcoin, Ethereum, they do fork. Like, can IOTA?
No.
Cannot get forked.
No, you can't. It's just partition tolerant, right?
Right.
So in the blockchain, if you fork, you can't go back in again. And in IOTA, if you fork, it's kind of like this partitioning, and then you can go back in again. So you can't like create two separate networks in that sense. You would have to completely like take the source code and set up a completely new network in that sense. But you can't just suddenly have two IOTA tokens, one IOTA A and IOTA B.
Okay, it's very interesting. What if like some group of people, as your ecosystem matures, some group of people doesn't like the way you kind of develop it, and then they want to fork? What should they do? I mean, it happens, right? It happens.
Do you want to create a fork?
I mean, why not? I mean, people may disagree. People may disagree.
No, absolutely. So
They might not want trinary. They might want binary.
Yeah, so then you just have to take the source code and create a completely new network and try to get people to adopt it. So the thing about forking is obviously the security of the system depends on the number of participants. So if you fork, you start having serious security issues because now the security is no longer it's halved, right? Potentially, and so that's a problem.
Okay.
And so forking in IOTA is not possible, which is good. Because forking, in my opinion, forking is also one of the main reasons why it's difficult to standardize a blockchain protocol, because you have to take into account this kind of governance. And IOTA is a very, very simple protocol, and as such, it's much faster and easier to standardize. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you about the future plans. You mentioned about standardization. So, like, what kind of effort are you putting to make your system a standard?
So our main intention is to go away from proof of concept towards production readiness. And one part of production readiness is economic clustering. The other one is really to have a client that is really performant and has been vetted. And the third one is really standardization. So we have some very good partnerships lined up for that, for the standardization. We've already begun working on it. And we are really trying to push that into the space. So that's really crucial for the adoption of IOTA.
Yeah. What are the major stakeholders in terms of standardization who need to pursue it?
Do you have to answer that? so obviously like corporates and the standardization bodies themselves.
Right.
And because at the end of the day you need to have corporates that are going to use it, that adopt the standards.
Right. Yeah.
And so we have some very good partners with that.
Yeah.
We're pursuing the standardization together with us. Yeah. So we've already kind of convinced them, the early adopters. Then it becomes like once a standard is issued, then it has to really become a global standard, not just European or just Asian. It really has to become global. That's quite tricky. The other tricky thing about the standardization is that you kind of start cannibalizing your own business model with IOTA. So not business model, but like your own like goal vision. Because if we standardize IOTA, obviously what could happen is then corporates set up their own private tangles. But every time we speak with the corporate these days, it's like we say like, hey, either you're going to adopt the IOTA token, or we're not going to work with you. Because the thing about this machine economy can only work if we have this widespread interoperability with the IOTA tokens. We have this backbone where every machine knows, hey, like I can pay the other machine because it accepts the IOTA token. For example, with EV charging today, electric vehicle charging today, we have 5 different blocks, standards. And that's a huge interoperability challenge. And we don't want to replicate the same issues with this machine economy. So standardization is truly crucial, but you also have to treat it with care. But it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Okay. What are your some of the future plans in terms of development, and are we gonna see some cool stuff in the future?
Yeah.
So you mentioned about flash channels, probably.
Yes, so flash channels is really cool. So that's going to launch tomorrow. So you can play around with the live demo. I think mostly cool stuff that we have lined up is really those corporate partnerships.
Okay.
That we're going to announce and like really specific use cases. My main intention is really to have to like mainstream applications run on IOTA, so that you have thousands of devices and like really serious like applications being built with IOTA. But when it comes to the tech itself, like privacy is one of the major milestones. Then more clients, and then obviously also making it production ready. So that we have IOTA in the browser, we have IOTA in our machines, and so on and so forth. So this widespread adoption.
Okay. Let's get back to problem with standardization. Many of the economic incentive probably for the IoT device manufacturer is to the best strategy might be to own the data generated from the IoT devices. They might want to own the data, which will be profitable.
Right.
But to use the blockchain, you need to kind of like share the data freely in the marketplace.
You don't need to share it. You can sell it.
Okay.
So you still own it. But
the data will be owned by the users.
Right. So it will still be owned by the users. So especially in Germany, we're going to have like some much more serious data protection laws. But the interesting thing for corporates in this data marketplace is that it's truly something very unique, because now you start having a completely new business model where you have this access of data and you can just start selling it, and another company might need it. And it's very interesting, because at the end of the day, corporates want to make money, and if you give them an application where they can really start making money, they start realizing like, hey, like we should look more seriously at this stuff. And I personally see this data marketplace as one of the killer applications of IOTA.
Interesting. Okay, Schiener, do you have any more questions from the viewers?
Yeah, we got quite a few questions from the viewers.
Yeah, let's take them and then we'll finish.
All right. So I'm not going to ask any of the questions that were asked before or we're repeating. First of all, Dom, what are your views on Tangle being used for point of sales?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So it's definitely doable. The main difficulty is always like, how do you get into that market? Yeah. When it comes to China, they didn't have any point of sale systems before the last, I think, 3 or 4 years. As such, for Alipay and so on and so forth, it was like super simple to get into this market and completely conquer it. And with IOTA, we don't have that, right? So we still have to figure out a strategy that makes sense there. So we are not people that say like, hey, like, so the problem of blockchain people or startups most of the time in this space, they say like, hey, like, there's this grandiose idea, let's pursue it. Most of them don't understand that you really have to figure out how to really get there, how to implement it. And we assessed that, like, we really thought about these things more thoroughly, and the Internet of Things is really one of those areas where we have this potential to really be this early adopter and conquer the market through that. But point of sale makes a lot of sense. Like, if you have any contacts to one of the POS manufacturers, it makes sense to talk with them.
Yeah, I think this question fits in really nicely with the next one, which is like the role that IOTA plays in the Trusted IoT Alliance.
Yeah, so we are definitely one of the participants and one of the technology providers. So we are setting up a new testnet under them, so you can start playing around with it. And we were also collaborating on these use cases. One of the major things that we want to get out of the Trusted IoT Alliance is really this interoperability. And I personally also want to start figuring out like really which blockchain, which Tangle makes sense for which use case. Obviously, IOTA can run on a much lower level than anything else. As such, we're already starting to work with Hyperledger and so on and so forth in some use cases.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
You You guys are. Oh, okay. Crap. Okay.
Yeah.
That's quite cool. I think this is about your competitor. What do you think about Walton chain?
Walton chain? What's
Yeah,
that?
it's like a new. It's like a new thing that came up very recently.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You don't know anything about it.
I mean, it has chain in its name, right?
Yeah.
So.
Okay, never mind. Well, we'll skip that question. So this is going back to the smart contract idea. So the last IOTA timestamp paper stated that it is a probabilistic approach, and therefore you cannot be 100% sure about the order.
Yeah.
How can this be used as a basis for smart contracts, which requires to have a discrete order on the ledger? And if not so, what is the main thing about probabilistic timestamps?
So I'm not an expert on timestamps. You would have to ask Sergey about that. But when it comes to smart contracts, it's like layer 2 approach in that sense. So, but I can't comment more about that.
Okay. And this one is: does the IOTA Foundation support open source hardware leveraging Tangle technology?
Yes.
Do you have any open source hardware?
Not right now. Not right. You mean if we work like with you mean like with open source projects themselves?
Yeah, open source hardware projects.
Oh, okay. I thought if we are going to put up open source hardware, which we're also going to do. But still, we don't leverage with anyone right now, but we're definitely interested to talk with some of them. Yeah. But it's kind of too busy right now, so there's too much work. Yeah.
Okay, and there were quite a few questions about like artificial intelligence neural networks. Are you guys involved with that at all?
Yes.
You are? How?
Yes, so we're really also into machine learning and like combining IOTA with AI to really like think about like some of the new applications that you can build with it. And the interesting thing about IOTA is that it's a very self-regulating system because it can really adapt to its network. But we have some really good contacts and we're going to leverage them to build some partnerships here.
Okay, yeah, that's all the questions.
That is cool.
Yeah, I've got just like one last question. I mean, Tangle, the other stuff that's quite unconventional. Let's mention it like a lot. Like, where do you get those inspiration from? Like, you and your founders.
So it kind of makes sense, right? It's the most logical step after blockchain.
But how did you make? No, I don't think so. I mean, it's like not many people have thought about making blockchain into like
right.
Tangle. Like.
Yeah. So the thing is like Sergey is a mathematician,
right.
So he knows all about graph theory and so on and so forth. It makes for him it makes a lot of sense to think about like, hey, like we have the sequential chain. Why don't you do a DAG? Try to make a DAG work. So him and Sergey Ivanchuk really came together to come up with a very sound technical solution.
Okay.
And that's how it came to be. So it's a very pragmatic approach. Like we start with a problem and you come up with a solution.
Right.
Yeah. We didn't one day wake up and think like DAGs. It was just like, hey, like there's this problem that we really need to solve.
Right.
Yeah.
I personally have this theory that the majority of the people in the blockchain space, they're probably like high as fuck on something.
Yeah.
And you come up with a brilliant idea. Like all the names like Ethereum, no offense, but like Ethereum Plus, and like I'm pretty sure like you had not have been smoking something to come up with it. So
we
like,
did
same
not.
thing with IOTA.
We did not.
Yeah. All right. Just one more thing. People, the viewers want to know about exchanges.
Okay.
Well, I guess two questions.
Soon.
What is why in the world is IOTA not on exchanges?
Yeah.
And on a lot of exchanges. And number two is what have you been doing in Korea in regards to exchanges?
I'm here for holiday, right?
Yeah, we're gonna go to that.
Yeah. No. So the thing about all of these exchanges is that they have like very difficult operational issues sometimes. And every exchange that we spoke with, like they always really like IOTA. They say like we definitely want to list it, but they say like, hey, it will take a few months for us to list it because we have these internal scalability issues, resource limitations, and so on and so forth. And we always say that we're like fucking unlucky. So every time we talk with an exchange, they say like, yeah, like hey, we can't list it. We were trying to be listed on Binance like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Then all the China stuff happened.
Oh, right.
It's just like, yeah, shit happens, right? Yeah, but our intention is really by the end of the year that all of the major exchanges are going to list IOTA, have listed IOTA.
Right.
Yeah. Would it make sense because you guys are so high up on the market?
Yeah, exactly. And we're probably one of the most legit projects in this space. Like, there's Ethereum and IOTA, which are probably the two only legit ones that are really about there to get shit done. And we are really like have some serious adoption.
I think
We got
Bitcoin
an
maximum
abstraction.
was beg to differ, but but we'll take your answer.
You want a video with that?
No, that's not.
Okay.
You want to wrap it up?
Yeah. Okay. Well, is there anything you want to say to the viewers before we finish the interview?
What's really important for us is really to build this ecosystem. So have people participate, like do startups. Because at the end of the day, like you can, one way to make money is through the tokens. Sure, like it's speculation, but what's much more sustainable is like if you really try to be an entrepreneur and build something with it.
Right.
And we really want to support people. That's why I was talking about that with the IOTA Foundation. We want to foster this permissionless innovation, so that young entrepreneurs can really build stuff with IOTA, create new applications, and start making money with that as well, like solving problems for other people. Right. And yeah, so some encouraging people to just build something. There's this mentality like, let's do it, fuck it.
Yeah. Okay. It was a great interview, Dominik.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming today for the interview.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. You wanna?
No, close it up.
Okay.
Close it up.
How
I've
do
never
you close
done
it? Do you go with your hand in front?
Okay. Yeah, guys. This was Dominik from IOTA Project. We had a very good interview about Tangle and other stuff. This is the Blockchainers. My name is Youngwon. So we we did the interview about the hot guys in the blockchain space. So just keep watch our shows, please.
Thanks for watching. Bye
Thanks
bye.
for watching.